Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, depending on what class you're in. I wanted to model an interactive notebook, what it should look like when it's done from an Algebra 1B class. You should have a cover with your name. You should have either cut it out in some way, and there should be mathematical symbols in here. Like I try to make all the mathematical symbols, so you see the division symbol, the plus sign, the dividing, parentheses, minus sign in pink, brackets. But as long as you have some kind of symbols, you're good, and your name. When you flip open on page 1, there should be this summary of all the thinking maps. So one thing that I noticed that if I used a marker, like I did with another sample journal I started, it bleeds through onto the next page. And so you can kind of see, like in this case here, let me scoot over a little bit. You can kind of see that the 4 from the next page bled in. So it's better to really just use like a pen to label your page, not a marker. Okay, on page 2, you should have the table of contents. And on page 3, also a table of contents. You can pause this video at any time. It's why I'm doing it as a video, because there's a lot of stuff to cover. But this is the material. This is what you should have. You should have the cover on page 0, thinking maps on page 1, table of contents on 2. You can see this is page 2. It's the table of contents. Table of contents on page 3. Measures of center on 4. Standard deviation on 5. Box and whiskers plot on 6. Joint relative frequencies vocabulary on 7. Warm up 11 and 12, which we haven't done yet, but that will be on page 8. So again, if we go through the pages, we should have thinking maps on, we should have measures of center on page 4. When I go to page 4, you should have this chart that looks like this, measures of center, okay? I wonder if I can turn it sideways. So if you have yours, write it in there. Tape it in. I recommend tape over glue. Glue seems to fall apart. If you lost it, you can pause the video right now and you can copy it in there. I know there's some other things we added, but just put that in there. It's okay. Standard deviation should be on page 5, this thing that we made. So tape that in there. Again, if you lost it, copy it in. Box and whiskers plot should be on page 6. And then on page 7, you should have these vocabulary words. That and the pictures you drew. And then there's a definition you should have at the bottom from the video you watched. I didn't put that on there because you guys are responsible to watch the video. And then at the very end of the book, you should have a multiplication chart. Now, I put it on the hardcover here. You could do it either on the hardcover or you could do it on the last page of paper. Either way is acceptable. It's okay. And on the very last page, and flip it, you should have this thing called badges, and I'll go over more of that later. But basically, by the end of the semester, I want you to have some skills that I'll test you on, and if you have them all, you'll put a mark there, then I'll sign it, and that means you are proficient in that area, skills. Okay, so that is how your interactive notebook should look at this time. The only thing I would like to note right now is that when we do our warm-ups, we're going to do them in here. It's going to be evidence for your IEPs that you're doing work. That we should be able to fit 2 warm-ups on 1 page. And I'm doing that to save paper. So when we do our warm-up on page 8, you might even draw a line in the middle or something. I'll just do it this time to indicate this is warm-up 11. And then warm-up 12. And again, you want something like a line so that you and I both know that there's 2 warm-ups on that page. That line will be the dividing point. All right. Well, I hope this all makes sense.